stream and just getting the webinar started a couple minutes earlier to go over the technology for those of you who aren't familiar with using the GoToWebinar software. We always use a webinar format for these conversations to make it as interactive as possible. So we really encourage you to take advantage of the features of the webinar so that you can join our discussion today. You should all have a control panel on your screen that looks like the one on this slide. If you don't see it, it's probably because it minimizes itself if you don't touch it for a couple seconds. So just go ahead and look for this little panel will open right up. The next thing I'll call your attention to is the attendee on the call. Additionally, there are two ways for you to join the conversation today. The first is to raise your hand with this little hand button right here. When I see your hand raised, I can go ahead and call on you and unmute your microphone so you can participate in the conversation. So why doesn't everyone go ahead and just raise their hands? I know we're pretty professional at this by now, but we might have some new people on the call today, and I just want to make sure everyone is comfortable with that feature. Great. I see a bunch of hands going up. Wonderful. In addition to raising your hand, you can also use the questions log to submit questions. You can type a question right in that pane. It'll come directly to me, and then I can share that with our panelists so we can all discuss your question. I will mention that a couple of times we have had some technology glitches where people who are trying to speak aren't heard. If we can't hear you, a couple suggestions. First, just make sure your personal microphone is not muted. And then worst case scenario, you can always hang up and call back in, and that should fix any problems. Just make sure you've entered your access code and your audio pin that you should see right on your control panel. And then the last thing I'll mention is we'll take a couple of polls during the conversation, and you'll be able to click your answers to submit your feedback right on the screen. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Carol to get started with today's webinar.
With everybody. I hope summer is going well for all of you and you're getting some well-deserved R&R time with your family and your friends. We appreciate you calling in today, though, because we've got some exciting information to share with you about the Catalyst Grant Program. So know that this is something that you're going to care a lot about. The first thing I want to do today, though, is I wish with the Catalyst Fund. We have Rachel Signer, who is our Vice President for Community College Relations and Applied Research. And if you look at her picture, she looks like she's been having a wonderful summer at the beach. I can tell you she's been working hard, and I'm not sure she looks quite as fresh as that wonderful picture makes her look on your screen right now, but we're glad she's with us today. Same is true for Sarah Hollister, our Associate Director of Programs, who's on the line today. She's really going to be the worker. She's going to be the one sharing a lot of information. We appreciate her time today. And then, of course, Mary, our Consultant Extraordinaire, is with us this afternoon to make sure everything works smoothly with our technology and other aspects of the webinar. So thank you so much to the team for being there today. Mary, I'm going to give you a chance to go over the agenda, if you don't mind.
Sure. So just to make sure everybody knows what we're going to cover, switch to our main presentation about the Catalyst Fund grants and leave plenty of time for all your questions and comments about this exciting opportunity. And Carol.
Something that's really exciting that I didn't mention before is that we have Patrick Henry Community College's new president, Dr. Angeline Godwin, is on the line today. And Dr. Godwin, we couldn't be happier about your being with us. This is a real honor that you've taken the time to join the call today. So thanks so much for being with us, and thank you so much for continuing the participation of Patrick Henry in Achieving the Dream. I wanted to give a couple of shout-outs, if you will, to some of our leader colleges who have been doing wonderful things to help support this reform movement that we're all part of. So today, I wanted to say something special about Dr. Jim Murdoch, President of Tallahassee Community College, and also Tom Snyder, who's the President of Ivy Tech Colleges. Both of these gentlemen were asked to testify on July 19th before the Senate Committee on Health, Education, and Labor and Pensions. And the topic they were asked to comment on was about colleges, about the importance of keeping college costs under control. I just wanted to share one snippet with you from Tom Snyder's commentary, because he was kind enough to mention Achieving the Dream in his testimony. And he mentioned that early, it was roughly the same time that they had joined Achieving the Dream, and they also had set a number of goals, just like all of you did, to try to improve their student success and completion rates. In his testimony before the Senate Committee, he mentioned that not only had he met that goal of being here more than 10%, and a good bit of that he attributed to the work that his team had done on Achieving the Dream. They had, for example, increased their persistence rates from 55 to 60% before they joined Achieving the Dream to 75 to 80% after they joined Achieving the Dream. And they've also are now on a pathway where they believe their completion rates are going to go up by 10 to 15%. The impact of all of that, according to his testimony, is that he's anticipating that they are going to continue to generate additional savings, 2 to 3% every year, and that it's actually lowering the total per pupil cost. Positive news, but I think all of us have been struggling with trying to find some of the return on investment data that we can use to both reflect the progress that's being made in the work you're doing, but also what kind of an impact it can have. One of the things that struck me about this was that we ought to be thinking about how others of you are working on return on investment statements and maybe give us all some greater support staff. So great work to those two. Thank you so much. The other, one of the peer institutions to Zane State in Ohio, because what they did back in April was they convened a statewide math summit, and they invited all of the Ohio community colleges to come to that event. They brought Dr. Uri Treisman in from the Dana Center in Texas. Many of you remember Uri Treisman was a keynoter at one of our DREAM Institutes a number of years ago. And Uri was talking about some of the Mathway reforms that he's been working on, as well as the Carnegie Foundation's been working on. Apparently this event was an opportunity for everybody in Ohio to share what they've been doing in reforming math, and it was really a very positive event for all who came. So thank you to the institution that now we've learned with other colleges in the state of Ohio. Keep those nominations coming in. We'd love to hear whom else you. Some of you probably are aware that we sent to your presidents, all of the Leader College presidents, a survey that we asked them to complete. I think they have another week yet to go on that. Or no, actually it says it's survey by Wednesday, August 15th. Okay, they do have another week. The purpose of that call is, or that survey rather, is we're trying to get your presidents to give us more information about what they would value in special institutes that we would put together for Leader College presidents. You may remember that last spring we were doing a good bit of research with the Leader College presidents and with national experts on what is it that presidents are struggling with and I feel challenged by. Even our most experienced presidents are saying that these are unusual times when budget crisis, increasing enrollments, greater diversity of our student body, greater competition from private colleges and online institutions, the press for greater accountability and completion, all of this coming at one time. And even our most experienced leaders are saying this is not something that they studied how to react to when they were in their years of academic preparation for their jobs. So these institutes that we're working on would be that we get their feedback on what they would value, and we already have 26 of the presidents have responded. If you could give your president a nudge, if you don't think they have yet responded to the survey, we would very much appreciate it. And then thank you to those of you who were also willing to make welcoming calls to the new ATD presidents. Again, we've had a nice response from your presidents who have graciously extended phone network. Thanks so much for making that work as well. With that, let's get on to that Achieving the Dream is able to make to Leader College. Find some of the requirements and the expectations of the recipients of these awards. And she's also going to be available to take your questions and to tell you how you can get more questions answered even after today's webinar. So with that, let me just turn it over to Sarah and give her a chance to walk you through some of the highlights of the RFP. And what I would encourage you to do, even as she's talking to you, if a question is popping into your mind about something that you really hope Sarah will cover during her comments, just put it in the type a message in the chat box so that we can keep track. Mary is going to be watching that to see what all of you are feeling like you need to know that that Sarah may not have hit upon, and we'll make sure to cover that information. So with that, Sarah, let me give you the chance to walk us through this really exciting new opportunity that Leader Colleges have.
Sure. Good afternoon, Achieving the Dream Catalyst Fund. I know we're all very excited about the opportunity. In the presentation, as Kara details related to the proposal submission process. Because a lot of this information can also be found within the RFP, practices increase institutional reform and foster learning across the Achieving the Dream network. On this slide, you can see the grant opportunities that we have issued to date through the program, the Bank of America Financial Empowerment Grants, the Press for Completion grants, and now the Catalyst Fund grants. Two of these grant opportunities have only been open to Achieving the Dream Leader Colleges, and this is because Achieving the Dream and our funders recognize that Leader Colleges have already demonstrated success and are poised to bring the student success grant opportunities from Achieving the Dream. There will certainly be more opportunities to come, and especially for Leader Colleges. Next slide. The Developmental Education Initiative, which many of your institutions were a part of. The purpose of the Catalyst Fund grants is to spur the scaling of successful student initiatives among a significantly large population of students. The grants are open to all current, active Achieving the Dream Leader Colleges, and we will be awarding 4 Catalyst Fund grants. So this will be a fairly competitive process. Next slide. Each Catalyst, the expansion of interventions, recipients will be expected to support 2 additional years of implementation after the initial grant funds expire. So recipients will set goals for 4 years of implementation and commit to continuing their scaling work with Achieving the Dream 2 years beyond the Catalyst Fund grant cycle. Achieving the Dream will provide the 4 Catalyst Fund institutions with technical assistance, which will include regular site visits, check-in calls, and other implementation support. The main expectations of the Catalyst Fund colleges will be to scale effective student interventions, track and report on various deliverables and student measures, participate in unit record data to Achieving the Dream, participate in Catalyst Fund learning events such as the Kickoff and Dream, and provide support to future Achieving the Dream institutions that wish to scale successful student interventions. To defining and explaining some of the key terms and tools, that framework to be a very useful tool for discussing the progression of students through the community college system towards completion. And we will be using this framework throughout the Catalyst Fund work. In the RFP, we asked colleges to identify which points on the loss momentum continuum the interventions that they're proposing to scale address. And we also ask how these interventions will hinder losses and encourage momentum. And the framework is posted under the resource section of the ATD Catalyst Fund site. Next slide. In the RFP, Achieving the Dream asks that colleges submit for more years. This is very similar to the Leader College application process and the way that we determine priority in the Walmart Press for Completion proposal. We are asking for both quantitative and qualitative data here because we realize that the full picture of success is really told with both types of measures. Another key term that I'd like to address is significant student reach. This is the term that Achieving the Dream is using in regards to the population that the intervention or group of interventions to be sure that the target population of the intervention to be scaled is a population that's integral to the overall student success agenda at the college. In addition, this target student population should represent a significant portion of the total student enrollment at the institution. So the goal of the Catalyst Fund colleges will be to serve significantly more students within a large target student population that will have an impact on the overall reform movement on campus. Scaling. There is a lot of discussion in the community college field about how to define and measure scaling, and many of you have been central to this discussion through your participation. EC has created the More to Most Guide to Scaling at Community. I'm actually getting over a cold, so I'm going to take a pause for water. Sorry about that. So from this discussion, we have the More to Most Guide to Scaling, which Achieving the Dream and colleges have found a framework to help guide the Catalyst Fund work and to assist us in measuring scale. I won't go into the details of More to Most, since we did do a Leader College call on this, and many of you are familiar with the More to Most Guide. But as you will see on the slide, if we could continue on, Mary, Achieving the Dream has taken the More to Most framework and applied percentages to it for the purpose of the Catalyst Fund, which will be considered when the intervention or group of interventions is serving 60% or more of the target student population. So therefore, colleges can propose to scale interventions based on the percentage of the target student population the interventions are currently serving. That is, a college may currently be serving 25% or less of a target student population and would therefore propose to scale this intervention to serve more students within the target population with the ultimate goal of serving most students within the target population. Excuse me. A college may currently be serving between 25.1 most of the targets. Finally, if there are colleges that have interventions that are already serving most students in a target demographic, which is they're that are proposing to scale an intervention outside of their institution. And this leads us to the next slide, where I'll go over the inter and intra-institutions. In college, as intra-institutions are referring to as inter-institution scale with other Achieving the Dream institutions to expand the successful intervention to these other colleges, or even within an entire region or state. Inter-institution scale is not limited to those colleges that are already serving most students, or more than 60% of students within a target population. However, if a college is proposing to scale an intervention beyond its institution that has not already brought this intervention to scale within its own institution, it should be sure to provide good reasons for why it's not focusing on scaling the intervention within just its own institution. And just a side note about these categories and terms, the goal of the Catalyst Fund is really to be ambitious about scaling interventions to reach more students to assist them on their road to completion. And as long as a college can propose a reasonable and ambitious scaling strategy, Achieving the Dream will consider this. Excuse me for all my coughing. So finally, just a brief note of More to Most framework. So breadth is described in More to Most as increasing the number of students an intervention reaches, and depth is considered increasing the intensity of an intervention. So one of the examples of depth and more to most is adding supplemental instruction to learning communities designed for students who test into the lowest level of developmental English. So obviously the Catalyst Fund grants best fit with proposals to scale the breadth of interventions, that is, increasing the number of students served. However, Achieving the Dream will accept proposals from colleges on scaling depth if a college really wants to investigate this. But again, the college should be sure to show how such a proposal could fit within the Catalyst Fund requirements. Next slide. Go-to place. This is where you have all the information you will need. You will start accepting submissions on August 23rd, and all proposals are due to Achieving the Dream by September 6th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Proposals will be submitted via a link on the Catalyst Fund website, which will be available by August 23rd. Please do read the whole RFP carefully. There's a lot of detailed information in there, and in order to make sure that your proposal is aligned with the intent of the program, it's important to be sure that you understand the RFP. Please pay attention to how you present your data and your narrative. So graphs and charts should be labeled clearly. As in the press RFP, there is a checklist to help you keep track of all the parts of the proposal. And Achieving the Dream will review all of the proposals and contact the applicants no later than October 16th. Selection criteria, the committee will also be looking to accomplish a good geographic distribution of the student population served. And finally, there will be a kickoff in Washington, D.C. in the fall, and colleges will be expected to send 3 to 5 representatives. Next slide. We have several places where you can get support in writing your RFP. As I said, the Catalyst Fund site is your go-to resource for everything, including the RFP. Achieving the Dream will have 2 question and answer sessions. You can see the dates and the call-in information there, and you can call in and ask any questions you may have. And hopefully by then I will fully be over my cold. And then, of course, you can always direct questions to catalyst@achievingthedream.org. I monitor this account, and I know several colleges sent questions to me and had conversations helpful to get a better sense of kind of the purpose and the goals of the grant. So I do encourage you to take advantage of the Q&A sessions, and you know, feel free to drop me an email, and we'll get any of your questions answered. So with that, move to the next slide. Mary, do you?
Stephen Murray. And he wants to know if the reference to a significance in the selection process.
No. Large population of students is relative to the overall enrollment at the college. So we will be looking at that, you know, what percentage is the target population of the entire student enrollment.
I'm sorry, Mary, this is Rachel Sigmund, and just to clarify a little bit, so for example, if you're, and giving Sarah a minute to rest her voice, if you are targeting all first-time, full-time incoming freshmen, let's say, and you're in a small institution, and your general population is somewhere between, incoming population is about 300 or 400 incoming freshmen, and you're serving 50%, and you move to 70%, that is absolutely considered, or that's your target. That's your target population, and your target is that jump in percentage. So it's not about the size of your target population in general, but we're hoping that your target population will be a good representation of the size of your institution. I hope that answers the question.
Great. And I have another question from Belinda Miles. She asks, would interventions to get more high school graduates college ready be an appropriate inter-institutional scale opportunity?
Yes.
It would. I would also say that if this is an intervention that the college has been working on for a while and can show that there's been some a building of a relationship between the college and the high school, and this is a way to scale up that intervention, then the answer absolutely would be yes.
Excellent. And I have another question from Martha Ellis. She asks, can two leader colleges form a collaborative and submit one proposal?
We're open to all sorts of ideas and ways of aligning this. So yeah, if it aligns with the priorities of the grant, then we welcome that and would be very interested in reading that proposal.
Yes, we'd like the colleges to be innovative in this regard, but remember that when there's a partnership in this, we're looking at the whole picture and how that would fit in the some, more, most continuum, and how the colleges respectfully plan to submit and do the work together. We'd like to see all that information, but we do encourage people to be innovative in this area.
This is Carol. I'd like to piggyback on that too. I think if College A wanted to scale their wonderful math interventions and College B wanted to scale their high school bridge program, I'm not so sure that would be a strong proposal as a single submission, because it sounds like it's two different kinds of things going on by two different institutions who are improving their chances of getting picked by, you know, throwing in together and saying, let's split the 200 between us. That's not an exciting proposal. But an exciting proposal where College A was working on a particular math reform and College B was also working on that math reform, and they saw some synergy and some ways their staffs were going to get together. Maybe their faculties were going to do cross-college inquiry groups and, you know, some other exciting things. That would be more interesting if it had more than one college in the application pool.
Excellent. And Warren Yarborough asked, is it okay for press grant recipients to apply?
Yes, it definitely is.
Okay.
There's been no conversation in our house about saying once you get a grant from Achieving the Dream, you're sort of lost your eligibility for the next set of opportunities. So it is neither an advantage or a disadvantage to have received another grant from Achieving the Dream.
And Steady Muno wants to know if, Sarah, you can talk a little bit more about regional representation and what that means.
I think that that's probably a reference to the scaling outside of an institution. And the way we were thinking about that is that a college might have a really great intervention, say they're already serving the majority of students in their institution, and they want to scale it within a certain region. So to work with the community colleges in their area of the state or in the whole state to work on scaling that intervention and initiative beyond to more community colleges in their region or in a state. And obviously that would involve a certain amount of collaboration and partnership and buy-in from the other colleges and various state officials or regional officials if it was in a regional way.
Okay, hopefully that answered your question. And Steve Roller wants to know if, just a favor, Sarah, if we can post the information about the 2 question and answer sessions on the Catalyst webpage.
Sure.
I don't know if it's up there already. Yeah. Okay. And a more technical question from Charles Wood just about submitting the proposal. Do you have any preference as opposed to single or double-spaced text in the narrative?
So you'll see when you look at the RFP that there is a page limit, and that I do ask that there are boxes in the RFP, and I do ask that you answer you submit your narrative within the boxes provided, and that you keep the instructions in the document as well. So, of course, a reviewer's eye always loves double-spaced. If you can stay within the page limit with double-spaced, then more power to you. But we do encourage you to submit good information and complete information, but for it to be to the point.
Great, and just wanted to let everyone know we have about 5 more minutes for questions. I have a few more questions in the questions box here, but remember you can also raise your hands to join the conversation. A question from Joyce Romano. Does the initiative have to be something you have reported on through Achieving the Dream, or could it be an initiative you've been doing in conjunction with your Achieving the Dream work?
Yeah, it could be any initiative they have, even if they have not submitted it yet, as long as they have solid data to support that work. And as we said earlier, that they're in good standing as a leader college in Achieving the Dream.
Okay, and I have one question about how quickly I can get the PowerPoint out. I'm excited to hear that everyone's anxious to get started on their proposals. I will get these slides out to you this afternoon.
Yeah, and please know that all of this information, the majority of this information is in the actual RFP document at the beginning of the document. So don't think, the definitions, the key terms, they're all in there, as well as more information in terms of a timeline, et cetera. So I encourage you to sit down and, even if you're at the beach, it's really fun beach reading. So, I encourage you to read the RFP in detail.
Great. Does anybody else have any more questions? Again, you can submit them via the questions page, or you can raise your hand. We do have a few more minutes for questions in the schedule, and would love to use that time to hear from you about what you're still unclear on. Sarah, just a comment from Charles Wood saying that the presentation was really helpful. So good to get that feedback. I know Sarah's been going out of her way to think about how we can make this process as supportive as possible for all of our colleges. John McNamara wants to know, do allowable expenditures include equipment or enhancement of facilities?
I don't have, that information is all also in the RFP. I would have to scan through to pull it out right now, and I don't want to take the time. But I encourage you to look in the first part of the RFP, and if you don't find the answer, then send an email with that question to the Catalyst Fund, catalyst@achievingthedream.org.
Sarah, that is all I have right this second for questions. I don't know if Rachel, Carol, or Sarah, if any of you had some final comments before we move on.
I just want to thank Sarah for being so clear. I know she hasn't been feeling well this week, and so this was a tremendous undertaking, Sarah. You were very clear, and thank you so much for all you've done when you haven't been feeling really well. I appreciate that.
Sure, it was my pleasure.
And a couple more questions snuck in here. Steve Roller wants to know, does the page limit include the budget, timeline, and measures template?
No, when you look in the RFP, it's a page limit by section. So you'll see that there's a page limit in the various sections, and it does not include the template.
Great. Okay, and just another thank you from Stephen Murney, and I think that about wraps up the questions we have here. I am going to move on to an evaluation poll. Sarah, if you didn't have anything else that you wanted to add.
No, please.
Okay, so we just want to get your feedback on how this webinar experience has been for you. You should see a poll on your screen right now that allows you to give us some feedback about if you have a clearer understanding of the Catalyst Grants request for proposals, if you enjoyed hearing more about the overall ATD Grants program, including the past grants that we've distributed and the potential for more funding through this program. Want to make sure we answered your questions, and definitely want to know if there are still pieces about the grant program, the Catalyst Grant Program, and the RFP process that you are unclear about. And if that's the case, as always, please make sure you get those questions answered. Sarah gave you that email address, and then the Catalyst Fund website, which has a lot of great information on it about this process. So I have comments from about 76% of you right now. I'm just going to let a couple more of you give us your feedback before I close this poll and show everybody the results. Good, I have 84% now. Just 2 more seconds. Okay, so let's take a look. Looks like overall this was helpful for many of you. 89% of you have a clear understanding of the request for proposals, enjoyed hearing more about the overall ATD Grants program. That should say general questions I had about the Catalyst RFP. Sorry about that. That might have been confusing. And then a couple of you are still unclear about things. So as I said, and as Sarah has mentioned, there's a lot of resources available to get the help you need, so please do take advantage of those. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Carol to close out our webinar today.
Thank you, Mary. Very quickly, just wanted to let everybody know what is planned for the September Leader College call. We are going to have at that point in time a summary report that's coming out from Public Agenda and Achieving the Dream. It's a summary of what came out of the 3 cutting-edge reports that Public Agenda did for us last year. And this summary report tries to pull together the lessons that were in the individual reports that you may be familiar with. One was on faculty engagement, one was on increasing IR and IT capacity, and one was on scaling effective practices and policies. So we will have an opportunity to revisit those publications through this new synthesis summary document, and would be looking for ways to have a good conversation about what are the takeaways and things that we can actually put into practice on our own campuses. The other thing I will just remind you of is that drop Mary an email if you would like to nominate one of the Leader Colleges for the accommodations portion of our Leader College call, so that we can be sure and recognize the efforts that you're putting into this work. With that, I would like to wrap this up and thank you so much. We stayed on time, and Sarah, again, thank you so much. You've done a remarkable amount of work putting this RFP together and explaining it so clearly. We very, very much appreciate your leadership on this work. Thank you all. I hope you have a good day, and we will look forward to talking to you in another several weeks. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
The organizer has ended the session.